So my name is John Garlisch. I'm at the Bernalillo County Extension Office. I work a lot with our small farmers, especially small acreage farmers growing fresh vegetables, fresh fruits. I help them with quality issues, plant diseases, plant insects, as well as on the food safety side and marketing side. And I'm trying to get, especially help out many of our small acreage farmers get into the schools, senior centers, and preschools to get more fresh vegetables here locally into our system. So I work a lot with fruit and vegetable production at the Extension Office. So also work with Bernalillo County on their Beginning Farmer project down at the Gutierrez Hubble House. And if you've not been down there, that's a lovely place to be. So we're actively growing fresh fruits and vegetables. I also oversee our Master Gardener program at our demonstration garden. At our office, we raised close to 2,500 pounds of fresh produce donated to the Roadrunner Food Bank. And the area that we're growing on is just 15 raised beds, no bigger than from the screen to the last row of seats here. So it's just an old parking lot that we decommissioned, put raised beds on top of, and put mulch down. And we are growing. So if you've ever, our office is next door to the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center off of 12th and Manal currently. So if you want to stop by and see those raised beds, we have some that are just this high, but the majority of the beds are waist high. So, or between mid-thigh and waist, so that way we can sit, we don't have to bend over. We can put our tools and our harvest baskets right here. And especially with most of the Master Gardeners being 70 plus, trying to bend down and get down is not the easiest endeavor anymore. So even for some of us in our mid-40s, it's like, I don't have to sit on the ground and get up again. It's like, yay, I can just sit on the bench and reach right in. So we're trying to figure out many enabling gardens on things. So stop by the Extension Office. During the growing season, we have our Master Gardeners helping with the hotline. And I do have a full-time horticulturalist on staff and myself. We do site visits. So if you're having problems with your plants, your trees, your yard, or what is this leaf? What is this insect? What's wrong with my plants? We can look at pictures, we can submit samples to our diagnostic lab, and we can do site visits. So utilize us, and guess what it cost you? Zero. She's right. You've already paid it with your taxpayer dollars. We are all on taxpayer money from the feds, from the state, and from the county. So we work in tandem with New Mexico State University, with Bernalillo County, through the USDA. So all of our outreach is purely education, research-based. We're not going to sell you any products. We're just going to tell you, this is what you have. These are the options that you can do. And as compared to some of the garden centers or places that you go that try to push products on you, we're not going to do that. We're going to give you the options of, this is the cultural practice. This is what you can do from getting your plants healthy. These are the insects you have, the beneficials. The last thing we're going to do is recommend the pesticides for you. So that way you are all knowledgeable on what you have, how to manage it culturally, and I'm not going to sell you any product. So anyway, that's a little bit about what I do. Today we're going to talk about aquaponics and a little bit about hydroponics. And what is the difference? It's like, and some of you may have been like, okay, I have an idea, but that's not quite right, but that's right, but that's right. So what is it, John? What is it that we do have? And here we go. What is aquaponics? Aquaponics, and here's some handouts for you. Aquaponics is the marrying of two separate systems, growing fish and seafood and growing plants together in one system. So aquaponics takes aquaculture, so raising fish, whether it's goldfish, tilapia, in one system, and marrying it with growing plants without soil. That is the hydroponics. So we get the aqua, we get the ponics, and together it's a combined system of growing fish and plants together. So who won the battle over here?
We both won.
Well, excellent. So a lot of times when people see aquaponics, they just think it's growing plants in water, where that is more of the hydroponic side. Where how the aqua comes in, that's raising goldfish, koi, tilapia, shrimp, and having both the protein and the plants together in one system. So that's how everything comes together. So how does it work? So we have here an integrated system. Down here we have the fishies. We have our koi, maybe some goldfish. Fish eat, and then what do fish do afterwards? They poop. That's a good word to say. We need the fish to poop. Why?
Fertilizer.
The fertilizer. So the fish poop, the poop filters out and breaks down into the nutrients. And then that nutrient water comes up in here to all these pipes, or in some systems, the plants may be right on top of your fish tank. And then the plants, as it breaks down, all the roots and the nutrients are taken up by the plants. That water is filtered out, and then that clean water comes back down into the fish tank. So it has a circular loop of the fish eat, the fish poop, the water comes up, feeds the plant, the plants filter that water, and the water circles back into the system. Yes?
Do you want to do questions like during the presentation?
I can go both ways.
Okay. And so are there extra filtering systems for the water that are required? Or?
Hold on to that thought. So here's the diagram that you're looking and referring to. So this is a little bit more complicated system as compared to the simple system. So what you have here is you have your fish rearing tank. And as the fish poop and settle out, you have a siphoning into this filtration system. So whether it is a biofilter, mechanical filter, there's different ones where it could be integrated into one or a decoupled, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. But either way, you have to have a settling tank for the solids to settle out and for that to mineralize and break down with the bacteria. So you have to have the healthy bacteria in here to get everything broken down. Otherwise, they stay in their solids. Then that water that has been broken down, demineralized, then flows through the plants. And then after all the plants have taken out their nutrients, then that comes back down into a sump pump that then puts it back up, re-oxygenates the water, and flows back into the fish system. Yes, sir?
How often is the water exchanged between the fish tank and the plants? Is it running continuously, or is there a timed schedule?
The answer is both.
Okay,
It depends on the system that you set up.
okay.
And so for some of the simple systems, it's always continually running. For some of the more complex systems, they have it time stop to come on every 10 minutes, every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes.
Okay.
Depends on how big your system is, what fish you're growing, and what plants you're growing. So it's a qualified answer.
Okay.
As with everything in life, it depends.
Yeah.
There's so many variables on this one. But so you have the aquaculture system here, and then you have the hydroponic system here. So as with hydroponics, which is this system here, you always have to inject your fertilizer for the plants to grow. Whereas with the aquaponics system, here you don't have to add any fertilizer to it because the fish provide all the fertilizer for you. And that's one of the nice unique things here. So this is where it gets integrated, but this is what's unique for this system is you have to have that biofilter in here. And we'll talk about why in just a moment. So some of the different systems that we have the coupled system versus a decoupled system. What is the difference between the two? When it's coupled, everything is together in one space and one loop. Decoupled, they are separated, but they are connected. So for decoupled, what we have over here, all of our plants are in one greenhouse, all of our fish are in the other greenhouse. Then they have a third holding place where the water gets exchanged. And that one you were asking if it was how often does it pump through? When it's decoupled, everything comes to a holding place, filters out, and then it goes back separately. So it's always stopgap, stopgap, stopgap. Whereas coupled, it's more continuously running all the way through. So here we have the bubblers, it gets over here to the quick filtration system to the plants and runs right back. Something that is unique with growing plants that we'll talk about a little bit here. A lot of times there is no soil in these. Here we have an ebb and flow bed that is filled with puffed volcanic rock. And a lot of times we're going to be starting our plants in these little pods to get them going, either with rock wool or little pods, and then they get stuck into the system here. And here the water flows up and then the water drains. The water flows up and the water drains. Sometimes we may even have these floating raft systems where there's always a continual flow of water. This can be in both the coupled or decoupled. For our general hydroponic system, we have a couple farms here in Albuquerque that are growing hydroponically with these floating raft systems. What they are, they're a special either styrofoam or a floating board that has holes in it. And then the plants just sit in water the whole time. And so for these, for the continual flow, it is gravity fed, so there's always water coming in on the one side, there's a pump down on the other, and it continually flows to keep the water circulating through. And what really works well for these are going to be your leafy greens and your herbs. So those work really well on the floating raft system. The Dutch bucket system, this can be one of two ways. So we have these deep buckets here that are flowing all the way through. The water on this one is coming on drip emitters. So there's always a drip emitter coming, and then the excess water flows out and then back into the system to be recirculated. Other ones that use the Dutch bucket system, they only have the one pipe down below, and then they fill up the pots with water, and then they let it go. So kind of like the ebb and flow system that fills up. So you'll see in some with these drip emitters, and other ones they ebb and flow with water. These work great. Here we have the cherry tomatoes, and all of these pictures are coming from the Santa Fe Community College. Santa Fe Community College is one of the leaders in hydroponic and aquaponic growing here in the area. Some of these tomatoes, I think, were almost 1.5 to 2 years old growing continually, so they're doing well. We also have these dino kales up here that are growing really well in the Dutch bucket system. And when I lived in Germany, they actually had these growing out outside, and they called them the palm trees of the north because they look like palm trees. Another one that system that some people use is called a nutrient film system. So what happens is they have a pipe on the very edge, and then there is a continual flow of misting air water coming through that always keeps a film, hence the nutrient film, a film of nutrients suspended all through the roots. So that it's not filled with water, but it's filled with water particulates. They do consolidate. Sometimes there is water flowing, but it's briefly. And these work really great for lettuces and small leafy greens. Here we have a deep, this is an ebb and flow system. So what happens here, we have the two pipes, the water flows up into here, and then the water drains back down. These are being used to get the seedlings propagated for the system, but other times these will also be filled with the expanded lava rock, those little pebbles. And up at Santa Fe, they're actually growing, and here in town, they're growing ginger in them as well. So there's lots of things that you can grow in these things. So these are being used for the seedlings so everything stays evenly moist, but there's different ways that you can use the ebb and flow system. So what type of fish should you use? Well, the easiest way to start, how many of you have a goldfish tank at home? How many of you, like me, as soon as you get the goldfish in, take it outside on a nice cold day, try to get it back into the system, it goes right up to the top and you have to send it down the toilet to its eternal home. So one of the things, if you're gonna start with aquaponics, try rearing goldfish before you do anything, because you can't get past goldfish, can you get to the other ones? So that's a question to be had. So start with goldfish. Just like before having children, have a puppy or two. Can we handle the kids? Can we handle the puppies? Start with goldfish. Some people are not doing anything for food-wise, but they're actually growing koi and then selling it. So koi is very popular for people and quite expensive, depending on which koi that you get. Some people are growing minnows to sell to bait shops afterwards for the fishermen. Tilapia, this is a meat fish. Some people like tilapia, other people do not like tilapia. Tilapia sometimes is referred to as the tofu of fish, sometimes because there's not much flavor to it. But what is nice about tilapia is it is okay if they're crowded together, and it can tolerate the cold temperatures and the warm temperature water. So in your greenhouse, if you're going cold and warm, your bluegill likes a little bit warmer, where trout likes a little bit colder. And so if your water is too warm, you're not going to grow trout. If your water is too cold or too hot, bluegill may not survive, but tilapia will. The one thing with tilapia for New Mexico is you do need a permit to grow them. So that's the one thing to know. Tilapia, you do need a permit to grow them. But there is a place up in Santa Fe, not at the community college, but an own private business. He's raising tilapia, and he has a contract with the markets now, with the restaurants, to buy the fresh tilapia to use. So that's one way. And he's growing basil and lettuce and got to sell those at Albertsons. So he's going into a massive scale. But I know for homeowners, what can I just grow for myself? You may just want to try goldfish to get your hand at things. When you really get up to a system, so this is at the Santa Fe Community College. This is tilapia. He has 10 rearing tanks of these of all different sizes, from the littlest fries to the biggest of fish. There's a special diet that they use. So because of how the fish grows, you have almost looks like powdered dust on the top for the smallest of the fries to eat. And then they get larger food when they get bigger. So first off, know what type of fish you're going to grow. Your water conditions or how to grow each of these is going to be different, so do your research. And then the food that you feed the fish, there is appropriate food for aquaponics that will break down for the plant nutrients. Not all fish food is made the same. So if you're going to be feeding your fish, that's going to be feeding your plants. Make sure you get an aquaponic appropriate that has all the nutrients that your plants need. There are more fish that you can grow. I know some people ask, can we grow catfish? The answer is maybe, but with catfish, they're bottom feeders, and secondly, when people touch them, they start to get hole in head disease, and they also get other slimy diseases. So it's not the easiest to rear catfish, so just to be appropriate. But to get started, go with something simple. What type of plants can you grow and what type of plants can't you grow? The easiest to grow is going to be your leafy greens and lettuce. As compared to growing leafy greens and herbs outside, these have a shorter, quick turnaround when you grow them indoors. So lettuce now can only be 20 to 30 days in an aquaponic, hydroponic system, where it might take you 50 to 60 days outdoors. Similarly with many of your herbs, and leafy greens, they really respond to growing indoors. And if you're growing cooler water fish, all of these, the bok choy, the Swiss chard, kale, spinach, and lettuce, these all can take cool water. So if it's a little bit cool, and especially for winter growing, all of those take low light. All of those can handle cool temperatures and cool water. So that's something with an integrated system, and especially for like a tabletop garden, it's easy because lettuce is cut and grow again. So you can take off a leaf and it will grow back. And so that's something really nice, and it is smaller space. For many of these, there are a variety of them that are bred specifically for growing in the hydroponic or aquaponic setting, they're going to be more compact. They're not going to sprawl all over the place. If you just get regular seed, you may be careful. You may have to watch out how much will they spread. So that's something to watch out for. Basil is an in-between plant and some of the other herbs. Chives do really well in the hydroponic aquaponic system. Basil needs it a little bit warmer. And so just make sure that you have a warm enough greenhouse. And for your fish, if you have a warm water fish, it can help with your basil, tomatoes, and cucumbers. But if you're going to grow tomatoes and cucumbers, what's going to be a challenge for you twofold with growing tomatoes and cucumbers in your house in an aquaponic or hydroponic system indoors?
Fertilization.
Yeah.
So fertilization,
I'm sorry,
I'm thinking about the bees.
the pollination.
pollination.
So tomatoes and cucumbers, first off, need to be pollinated, and they are usually pollinated by bees. So in absence of bees, either for tomatoes, you can shake the plant a little bit, but cucumbers need to be truly pollinated. So there are a few self-pollinating varieties specific for that, but otherwise you're going to have to take a Q-tip or a paintbrush and go around and pollinate all your plants. So unless you're going to have your house filled with bees or your greenhouse, I mean, in the greenhouse situation that works out, but for some home growers, what else about tomatoes and cucumbers might make it challenging at home if you don't have a full greenhouse to grow in? How do cucumbers grow?
They climb.
They climb.
Yep.
And most tomato plants, unless you get a short bushy one, they're climbers as well and go all over the place. So tomatoes and cucumbers, and let me go back just a little bit. You see how these are trellised and wired up? In a greenhouse situation, I went to one in Arizona. They were close to 15 to 20 feet long. They just keep going. And when I studied in the Netherlands, they were up to 30 feet long growing. So all of these are wired, and they cut the lower branches off just to keep them producing. So there are some shorter varieties. We have a tomato in my office that is now 3 years old, but we've had to cut it back and cut it back and cut it back to keep it contained. So you can keep them contained, but they can become mangy and wildly, and they have to have a good haircut every so often. So just be careful. But tomatoes and carrots, what time of year do these ripen and grow? Summer. When do we normally eat many of these? Spring, winter, and fall. These are cool season, they like it cool. These are warm season. Basil does not like it cold, and it gets black spot leaf often because of the cold weather. So these three like it warm, so make sure your house is warm enough or your water is warm enough to support them. And if you're going to be doing aquaponics, make sure you get fish that have warm water to them and not cool water to them. Goldfish likes a little bit warmer on things. So there's a whole slew of other plants that you can grow, like the ginger. But what does ginger like? Where's ginger normally from?
Hot, wet.
Hot, wet, tropical. And so if you have a warm, humid greenhouse, you're great. If it's just indoors with your dry heater, what is that going to do? So keep in mind, you may have to make a little mini greenhouse or a tent, or how you need to take care of your plants with the few things. So what do you have to watch out for? The first thing is water temperature. Some like it hot, some like it cold. So think about that, your fish temperature and your plant temperature. Are you trying, you want to raise your bluegill and your trout and your tomatoes? Your trout like it cold, but your tomatoes like it warm. So make sure you have your systems that right. So if you have a coupled system where everything is integrated, it's not going to work. If you have a decoupled system, you can take that cold water, get it warmed up for your plants, get it through the system, bring it back to your tank, cool it down before bringing it in. See how some of these things are starting to work a little bit? The other thing with water temperature is, as temperature rises, it doesn't hold as much oxygen. Fish need a certain amount of dissolved oxygen in their system. The more oxygen in the water, that's fine. But if there's less oxygen and less oxygen, what happens if you can't breathe? Same with the fishies. So if there's not enough dissolved oxygen, so if you have a fish tank, that's why we have to have those air bubblers to make sure there's enough dissolved oxygen in the system. And if the water is too hot, there's not enough oxygen in the system. But if it's too cold for other fish, they freeze. So all those fun things. Water pH. Water pH is a big thing because what do we have here for water pH? What is our water pH normally?
Our soil is alkaline, wouldn't the water be alkaline?
Our water is very alkaline. Our soils are about 8 and our water is about 7.5 to 7.8. So what that means is when the higher the pH, that also impacts the dissolved oxygen. But what happens when fish poop? What is a byproduct of fish poop?
Ammonia?
Ammonia. What happens if we have too much ammonia in our water or in our air sometimes? It becomes toxic to us. A certain amount of nitrogen ammonia is needed for the plants, but if it becomes too concentrated, and if our water pH is too high, that amplifies the impact of ammonia in our system. So the higher the pH, the quicker the ammonia becomes toxic to the fish and to the plants. So that becomes a challenge for us here. So that's why this is where it becomes challenging is you have to test your water every so often to see what is the pH and what is the ammonia levels in your water. Make sure you get aeration going for your fish, because if there's not enough aeration, then we don't get the fish. And if we lose the fish population, how are we going to feed our plants? And so that's where the decoupled system, you can buffer that. But if it's all coupled together or unified, if we lose our fish and everything, what happens to the rest of the system? It collapses. So the one publication I gave you was the important water quality parameters. So that will be a great, and I have handouts for you up here as well, sir. So I'll give those to you shortly. That is a great publication for you to read on the water quality, how to do water testing to make sure your fishies stay happy so that way you get healthy plants. So what are some benefits of aquaponics and hydroponics? One is you can grow all year round, and it uses less water. But we're growing fish and we have this big tank of water and you're telling me it uses less water and with evaporation? As compared to growing outdoors, you're doing a controlled environment indoors. And you're recirculating the water, so it's not one-time use and gone. Yes, you do have to add a little bit of water, but if you look at the whole year of growing, on the whole, it's less water usage. It's baffling to some people, but when you do the mathematics, it's there. If you are space limited, even if you're growing on a small patio or balcony in your house, you can grow leafy greens and have your salad all year round, and you can grow in less space. You can have your tomatoes growing. A lot of times we're using little to no pesticides, and our fish are producing the fertilizer for us. So we don't have to add fertilizer on top of things. We just have to feed our fish. So making sure you get the right fish to grow. The challenges. When our power goes out, our air bubbler goes off, our pump goes out, all of those things go out. So making sure that you have buffering for your power outages, and especially on those cold nights when we lose the furnace, and making sure the water doesn't. We had this happen at New Mexico State. Luckily we had a backup generator, but the other greenhouse did not, and it got too cold and all the fishies died. So depending on what type of system that you want, if you're going to build your own, you can. There's some great models out there. But when you start to put the price together of your pumps, your electricity, your pipes, getting all the things together, it may have a high cost to build out depending on what system you use. and moderate cost to run depending on what type of electricity, or get your wind generators and solar panels to run your system.
Oh, really?
The more challenging is, but I just want to grow, John. I don't want to have to know chemistry. If you're going to be doing both, you're going to need to test the water and learn how to test that water. So here we have, this is that ebb and flow system. We have the sump pump back here. There is a filter in that helps to bring everything together. So making sure you get the right biofilter and right bacteria to break down everything. Some of the bacteria will come naturally, other ones you have to introduce a little bit of a starter kit to get things going. So making sure that you have that system going with stuff. As compared to growing outdoors and in your pond and whatnot, for the full aquaponics system, you can grow plants and fish, but the selection of what you can grow beneficially is limited. So that's where if you're trying to grow them for food, fish to eat, that's going to be limited. If you're just growing goldfish or other ornamental fish, have fun. But for the plants, you're just going to be limited in scope. But the bigger point is, if you're integrating all the systems, because of all the tubes, the siphons, the pumps, the electricity, it is a multivariable equation, and you have multiple points where failure 1, failure 2, or it's the domino effect. When one goes, all of them go. Whereas if they're separate, the hydroponics doing their thing, the aquaculture doing its thing, they're not integrated. So if one fails, the whole system doesn't fail, or you can limit what the challenges are with that. So some beginner tips. If you really want to, first off, try it equally. Get a couple goldfish, get a little tank that has the herbs or the lettuce on top. Try it. Get the littlest one first before you start to build out your system. Begin with the fish tank, or if you want to, get the hydroponic system here, like this one is. The water fits in right here. We got the little tubes. Or get the fishies separate, so that way you get used to rearing your fish and growing your plants. And then as you get used to growing, then you can scale up to some of these bigger systems. Don't get dismayed by failure, keep trying. And I take the word fail and make an acronym out of it. It's your first attempt in learning. So, it's your first attempt in learning. So, if your fish goes bottom up, try again. If your plants start looking waterlogged or not healthy, try to figure out, is it the temperature? You might need some, we have LED lights with the red-blue spectrum underneath of it that kind of goes through. We have a full vertical hydroponic growing system at home where we have all of these little tubes set up at an angle. So we have leafy greens and strawberries, and it stands taller than I do, and we have a full herb wall growing vertically, hydroponically. Take a field trip up to the Santa Fe Community College. I know at Explora they have some aquaponics and hydroponics that are growing as well here in town. I believe one of the libraries is trying to get one growing. I'm not sure if that's going to be, do you know if that's going to be here, or is it going to be a different library that's going to have the
We have an aeroponic garden, but I don't know about hydroponics.
Okay.
Or
It might be Cherry Hills, but I know one of the libraries was trying to get a hydroponic and aquaponic system going to show people. So stay tuned for that. But get up to Santa Fe Community College for some of their open houses, as well as going over to Explora. I know they are doing some different hydroponic and aquaponic growing, so that way you can see the different system. But for starters, this little tabletop system might be a good little primer to kind of say, how do plants grow with fish? And that's the easiest way to do things. So as I said, Santa Fe Community College is a great resource. They have a full semester-long course just on aquaponic growing. It's called Controlled Environment Agriculture, is what their program is called. Charlie Solch is the leader of that. He and Rosanna, who is down at NMSU, we put together a 4-part webinar series every summer, so stay tuned. So if you want to get on for that as you're getting your knowledge picked up, Is Aquaponics Right for You? Is a great little publication. The other handout I'm handing out is an overview of the aquaponics components. So it walks you through all the systems, the filters, etc. So read through this one. The Southern Aquaculture Research has a couple YouTube videos that you can watch on how to put your systems together. How to build a tabletop aquaponics. So this is a nice little step-by-step that you can put together. If anybody wants my presentation, make sure you have your email on the sign-in sheet so I can send that out to you. And then there's some introduction to aquaponics, small-scale aquaponics, and aquaponics resources. So all of these approach it differently, show the things that you can build together for aquaponics. And that's what I have on the quick overview. So that way it's kind of a primer, but on the same token, as you start to explore and learn, things might become more complex. But for aquaponics, it's joining the fish culture and the growing of the plants. To get started, maybe have your goldfish tank, have your little hydroponic system, and then gradually build up and build up and build up. So